that I use to create infographics. And for this first time, I thought I would share with you something that you already have software for, and I'm sure you've used before, which is PowerPoint or Keynote. I'm actually going to be using Keynote because just because I like it, but it's the exact same in terms of what you can do. So I'm going to share my screen with you and tell you how to use it to create something fast. Okay, so maybe you remember, but a couple years ago, I created this infographic, which is showing what the whole global population does for a living. And since then, it's a little outdated. It's not 7 billion people in the world, it's 7.3, but it's still pretty close, and I'm going to use this data. And I wanted to show you how, using the exact same data, you can get a different visualization by showing a different insight than what you showed the first time. So here, this is a classic donut chart. It's a bursted donut chart, and it just shows the whole, right, that is divided into its parts. But what if you wanted to feel what it would look like to meet these people, right? So we don't have a good idea of what it feels like to meet 7 billion people, but we do have a good idea what it feels like to meet a few people, right? So what if we now use another way to visualize data, and we use actual people, right? So let's say 100 people, something like this, is something you can imagine experiencing in your life. And the most powerful visualizations are the ones that connect to your life experience, right? So everyone can imagine what it's like to meet 100 people. So if the whole world was 100 people, and these are the 100 people, then what would each of them do for a living? So we can use this same data to look at it in a different way. So this is 100 people, and let me show you how I got this picture. So all I did was just created a blank slide, right? And I took an icon that I created, but I can show you later how you can do it yourself, or you can download it. A ready-made one from me, because I shared these slides before. So if you haven't downloaded, let me know. I will put a link below this video for you to download these slides again, and the icons will be in the slides just like this. So you just grab one of these icons. Let's do it from here. Okay, I did Command C, and I'm just going to paste it in here. Okay, so here it is. Hard to see because it's black, but we can change its color over here in Format, and then go to this color wheel. And let's say I want to grab the color from here. So I'm using the eyedropper tool, which is right here. I can grab any color from my screen. Okay, here we go. So there it goes. Now I think it's a little small, so holding Shift so I don't distort proportions, so this diagonal appears, which is nice. If you don't hold Shift, it might distort it, which you don't want, so I'll undo that. Okay, so now I have one, and now I want to make 100 of these, right? So what I'll do is I will do Command C and then Command V, which is actually this one. So first I'll highlight it, Command C, Command V, and now I got 2 of them. Great, well then now I can copy 2 and then I'll get 4. And over here you see these, the yellow lines, I hope you can see them. They tell me that they're equidistant. Right? And then I'm going to copy Command C again, 4 of them, and I'm almost, so now I have 8. And one more time. Now I got 12. And 12 is not a great number because actually our eyes don't see 12 that well. But 10 is a good number. to be able to tell how many are in the picture. So I got 10, right? And now all I'm going to do is holding Option, I'm going to drag this, Option Shift so it doesn't shift left and right. And I'm going to do it one more time. So now I've got 60, right? And already I can see that, okay, this is not going to be a great use of my space, right? So right about here is all I can show. And then I think, well, I can probably do 2 of these side by side, right? And just make sure that here the distance is about the same. Now we got 20 by 5. Well, I just said that 20 would be hard to see, so what you can do is you can leave a little gutter space over here so that it's easy to see, okay, this is 10 and this is 10. And now we got 100 people. And now we can do all sorts of cool things. We can treat this as 100% and show percentages of occupations in the world population. And so all I would have to do, so let's say, go back to this image. Here I'm showing that most of the world, so the biggest chunk right over here, 1.9 billion, are too young to work. So our world is a young world, which is kind of cool. So they're ages 0 through 5. So that's 1.9 billion. And how do I express that in percentages? I'll just divide 1.9 by 7, and I will get about 20. I'll get about 20. Let's see, 26. So here 1 person is 1%. So it's really easy. Here we go. We're gonna color these guys as 20%, something like this, and then 6 more to about here. Using the eyedropper tool, I'm just gonna grab this color from about. Cool, so now we got 26%. So these are all the kids in the world. Alright, so now I'm going to go on like this and color all the other groups, taking the data from here. And I've done that here. And then I'm going to put the labels below here. So the same exact thing, I'm just going to go through like this, highlight them, and then change the color over here. Okay, so I got my isotype diagram, and I'm going to title it, If the World Were 100 people. And then probably I need the subtitle saying something like, what would they be doing, or what would they do, or what their occupation would be. Occupations, something like that. And of course, these 2 fonts are not in harmony with each other, so we need something, at least something like this and smaller. This is another topic that's cool and worth talking about, harmonizing fonts, and I'm definitely going to go through this in the class that I'll be teaching soon, but something like this. So now we are looking at the exact same data as we were looking at here, but we're having a completely different view of it. So now you can imagine what it would be like if you were standing in a room with 100 people and they represented the occupations of the world. So you'd be standing next to 6 entrepreneurs, 6 unemployed people. 7 of these people would be older than 64. I didn't want to say retired because some people don't retire, they're just older. And most of them would be too young to work, and those who are working would mostly be working in the services as opposed to agriculture or in the industry. So that gives us a different look at the same data. And look, we were using the software that you already knew, that you used a bunch of times before, and we created a real infographic, and now we just post it. How about I'll post it right after I finish this live. Okay, so that's pretty cool, but what if we made it even cooler? So what if we thought about how it would feel to see these people? What are they like? When I say, people older than 64 or working services or unemployed, what kind of pictures does that bring to your mind? And here, we see that they're people, but we don't really have that mental image. So to make it even more powerful, and people who think visually, they tend to have literal minds, right? So they want to see how it really feels, how it really looks. So why don't we show them? And why don't we use icons to represent these specific types? And so here, I just went to the slides that I gave away for free, which you can also get, like I said. And I just grabbed some icons from here that, like this one, representing 64-year-old, and this one representing unemployed, and this one working in services. So let's now try this. Let's duplicate this slide, and now let's put these icons into the actual isotype diagram. Now this will be a little bit harder because they are not exactly the same proportions. So you'll see right away that it won't be as easy, but it's worth a try. And if we get a picture that is still makes sense, still readable, then we did our job. Okay, so let's duplicate these. Now we need 26 of these, right? And I'm just going to do the same thing that I did before. So all I'm doing is Command C, Command V, and then making sure that these are equally spaced. So how many do we have? 8, and then 2 more. So that's 10. Now double that. And then 6 more at the bottom. Now this icon does not represent people who are 15 years old, right? But it does show that they're too young. Okay, so far so good. When you do isotype diagrams, try to look for icons that are simple, because with a lot of detail you get visual mess. You have too many details, and then they start vibrating. They create some sort of moire effects that are distracting. But if the icons are simple enough, then it could work. Okay, next icon, and I have to make it a bit smaller to align with the baby. So this is our service worker, and we need 24 of these. As you see, it doesn't really take long. It's just a matter of having the idea and executing it. So I'm sure you will be able to do this. Okay, 8 and then 2 more. It's not quite even. So in Illustrator, there is a cool function to distribute these evenly. Here, I don't think there is, but I will show you when we get to Illustrator how to do that. So they're not completely even, but we got 10 of these. Now we want 4 more. That will be 14, and then just 10 more. Okay. Alright, so now we got our service workers. Next up is the agricultural workers. So pasting it right in here. Again, here just eyeballing, this icon is definitely bigger, even though when we put them in the slides, we made them about the same size, but when you're comparing two specific things, one will always be not quite the same as the other, so we kind of have to make them the same. Okay, that's about the same, right? Alright, so 20 of these. That'll be easier. Okay, doing the same thing. Holding Option, dragging to copy. So now we got 4. Now we got 8 and 2 more, and that'll be 10, right? Yep, 10, and then 10 more. I'll just do it right here. Okay, so why didn't I go to the other line or start from the left? Well, the reason is because we want to see it as a group, right? We want to see, if we were to put people by some category in the physical world, we probably wouldn't put them like this. That's the way we write, true, but it's not normally the way we group things in physical world. So this is just more of a strategy, but I think that this is easier to see for the reader. Okay, so same thing for industrial workers. And here we need 11. So I would also, let's resize it a little bit. So I'm just holding shift, and you see this diagonal appears to let me know that the proportions are not being distorted, which is great. And then I copy it over. Not perfect, but somewhat okay. The way that this is copying. Again, if we were in Illustrator, we'd just distribute all of this perfectly. Alright, so that's 11, and then we have 7 people who are older than 64. This icon is tall, so, and all of these, without any exception, I got from the slides. The only thing is that this guy, the one with the tools, the industrial worker, I took a guy who was sitting at his desk where he didn't have anything on his desk. So I wanted to show that he's an industrial worker, and I added tools. And the tools, by the way, are here. So I took the guy from the third slide, this guy, and he just has an empty desk. And I took the tools over here, and I added it to the icon. And so you get a new icon. Kind of like the same idea as in Chinese characters, right? You have a radical and you can add other radicals and change the meaning. Okay, so that's already too many, right? Got carried away here. So we only need 7. And that's 7. Okay, 2 more. Oops. Here we go. 2 more is the unemployed. Again, this icon, the choice of icons is something that is an art in itself. So what do you want to emphasize with unemployed? I used the last time person with a sign, but here I'm emphasizing the fact that they are probably looking for a job but waiting. That depends on your interpretation of the world. So it's arguable. Okay, and entrepreneurs. So we got 6 of these, and entrepreneurs, this is a wide icon, so we're going to have to shrink it. Holding shift again, shrinking it to align it with the worker upstairs over here. So okay, so something like this. We got 6 of these. So we got 5 rows. Let's see. Why does it look? Yeah, so it seems right. Now I'm going to, but as you see, it's not quite in the right place, right? You want to probably blow it up a little bit. And in general, if you were doing this for a presentation, you want to make this diagram as large as possible. So what you can do is click off the figures anywhere and drag over this whole area. And you see that all the icons are individual shapes. We had to do this to color them individually. But what we can do now to scale the whole picture is we can, using control, so holding control, click on this group when it's highlighted and group it. Now it's all one object, and all we have to do is holding shift, scale it. Perfect. Yeah, now it looks like a real slide, and change this title over here. And so now we have if the world were 100 people, what their occupations would be, with the actual icons suggesting what it would look like. Alright, so hopefully you enjoyed that. And now I want to leave you, I'm not leaving yet, but I want to leave you for this particular visualization with an idea. How could you make it better? So there's another way to look at isotype diagrams, or another way to look at data, which is comparing. So here we're showing a whole and then parts of the whole. So the whole is the world, 100 people, and then parts of it is the groups by occupation. But what if you wanted to compare the world in 2017 today with the world, let's say, in 1990? Then you could use something like this. So you could copy this this one and put it side by side with another one. So this is the general layout, right? You could compare the percentages. Let's see if we scale it down. So here we would have to regroup, or we would have to do comparison one on top and one at the bottom, which is, I believe, is not the best way to compare, because it's still easier to compare left to right than top to bottom. But it would be something like this: the world in 2017 versus the world in, I don't know, 1990. Maybe it would be more interesting to do 1890. I mean, you can think about what would be more relevant for people to read and do something like this. So here's something to think about. What kind of data would be interesting in this particular case? Probably there would have to be significant change, right? So you could do pre-industrial society, or you could do society before World War II or something like that, and then compare it. And this would make for a really cool visual comparison. So if you want to do that, I encourage you to. I'm sure you can, just right here in Keynote or PowerPoint, whatever you prefer. I know a lot of you said that you use PowerPoint, which is totally fine, and I downloaded it and I installed it on my Mac, and it works just the same. I'm just more used to this, but in the class that I'll be teaching in July, I will be showing in both Keynote and PowerPoint. Alright, so there we go. So that's what we learned today, how to convert one type of chart into another. But I think that it would be also cool to show you how to generate a chart like this in Illustrator. Here it is. If you don't have Illustrator, you can get it for 30 days for free. Just download it from the website and start playing around. So here in Illustrator, there is a cool charting tool, which is right here. And honestly, I think Illustrator is great, and the its worst part is that the icons are so small, and at first it's just hard to get used to it, but once you get used to it, it's absolutely no problem. Okay, so I'm gonna click on this graph tool, and let's see, how do I click it to make sure that it shows everything? Sometimes I say to students, click, and then they click and it doesn't show up. You see over here, there's a tiny triangle. I don't even know if you can see this on Facebook, but there is. And when you click on it, that's where the drop down appears. So, or maybe double click would also work. Okay, so there's a pie graph tool over here, second to the from the bottom. Okay, so I click on it and nothing appears, and this is normal. So what I need to do is I need to drag my mouse over some area. It doesn't matter how big or small. Okay, so now I'm looking at the data window, and all I have to do now is paste some data into this window. So I'm going to be getting data from here somewhere. Yeah. Just copy paste like that. So normally you'd have a spreadsheet. Okay, except for I cannot have these words. So I'm going to delete the words and generate a pie chart. Oh, and I didn't sort them from small to big, but it doesn't matter, because we don't even know how we're going to orient the chart yet, so think about it later. Okay, great. So now all I have to do is click apply. Okay, and that generated a bubble chart. So that's normal. All I have to do is transpose row and column, which is this over here. By default, it would be the other way. I was probably doing a bubble chart last time I was in Illustrator. Okay, look at that. Here's our pie chart, and it's showing us the exact same data as in that other one here. So that's what we built, except for it doesn't look as colorful, and it's not a donut chart, and it's not an exploded donut chart. So let's do that. Why not? So we're going to close this window, and we're going to now click on this chart. And by the way, if you want to follow along, next time you can, but this time this video is going to be up on the Facebook page, so you can just rewatch it or whatever, so don't worry about not doing it as I'm doing it. Okay, so I'm going to highlight it, and now I need to ungroup it. Object, ungroup. Okay, so I highlighted the chart, and I'm going to ungroup it. So why I need to ungroup it is because there's two views or two ways to look at a chart as a chart, which is tied to the data, and then a chart that is not tied to the data, which is basically becomes art. So if I'm sure that this is all the data I need to put into the pie chart, I can ungroup it and stylize it and do whatever I want with it. So, and Illustrator will always tell me that, hey, this is a graph, and if you ungroup it, you can't put in any numbers anymore. It will stop generating it for you. So are you sure you want to? And I say yes. Okay, so now it's just a shape, and I can select each individual slice of it. So sometimes that's what you want to do, right? Take a slice out to emphasize it somehow. Alright, so that's good. So how do we make a donut chart out of it? Well, that's really easy. We just take a hole, which is just a circle, and we align it with the center. You could do it by hand, or you can use the align tool over here. You saw how I did it? Okay. And then there we go. That's a donut chart. Perfect. So what about if I wanted to explode this chart? So basically take the pieces apart a little bit. It doesn't really add more meaning, but some people like it, so I'll show you how to do it if you want to. There's a couple ways to do it. One is with stroke. So over here, these two rectangles show me the fill and the stroke. So I'm going to click on the stroke, and I'm just going to do white stroke. Here we go. And I'm going to do this thick stroke. Okay, that's a little too much. Something like that. And then put my donut over. And here we go, it exploded. It's basically the same as here. If you compare. Okay, can't really see. Similar, right? Well, we can turn it the same way. So holding shift, I'm just turning it to match where the other one was, which is here. Okay, now compare. It's still too big. Okay, zoom out. 50%. Okay, same chart. Great. There's another way to do it, and that is to not use the stroke, so no stroke, and pull the pieces apart. So I would do this if I wanted to emphasize some of the, if I wanted to emphasize some of the numbers, pull them out, but not others. So let's say I wanted to emphasize this little slice, and I'm going to hold A and then pull it out. So there we go. And then do the donut. So there you go. Okay, now that it is ungrouped, I can also color it whichever way I want. So I'm going to drop this one in here. And similar to the way that we were doing it in Keynote, there's an eyedropper tool. Where do I want to position it? There's an eyedropper tool in Illustrator, so you can click on any slice and eyedrop the color from here. Just like that. Holding A, I'm just doing the eyedropper tool. So holding A, clicking on the slice, clicking on eyedropper or I, which is a hotkey combination, which by the way makes this work a lot easier and faster. Oh, that didn't work because I dropped it in the wrong place. Okay, and the reason why I pulled out this slice is because back when I was doing this first chart, I was really curious about how many people in the world are entrepreneurs, because I was thinking of becoming one. And so, if I wanted to emphasize that piece of the data, actually this is not the entrepreneurs, it's the purple one. This is the unemployed. So if I wanted to emphasize the entrepreneur part, I would just pull it out and emphasize, well, it looks like not that many people in the world are entrepreneurs, but maybe it's actually more than some people expected. So, trying to make it even. Okay, there we go. So next we would just add the icons and the labels, which I can show you next time. Okay, that's probably a lot of things to take in, but I would encourage you to go practice this if you're interested in doing other charts using this tool over here. You could actually take this same data and do a bubble chart, which would be really cool too. And use them all. Try it and see how it feels. Which one feels to you the most alive, the most intuitive, the most informative. And by the way, I got this data for this graphic from a public free resource, which is, well, there's 3 sources, but census.gov is amazing for any kind of population data. So I logged in there today, and it says that the world population is 7.3 billion. So you could just take the same idea and do it for 7.3. And that would be more relevant for today. And then I use CIA.gov, and this gemconsortium.org has a lot of data about entrepreneurs specifically. All right, so hope that helps. And if you have questions about this or anything else, leave it in the comments. There's once you create this infographic, then the question is, well, what do you do with it? And how do you choose the topics to create the infographics about? And how do you integrate these charts into something more comprehensive and make it look more like a story? And all of these things I will be covering in the class that's coming up in July 24th is when it starts online. But if you pre-register today, you get a one-on-one session with me, and I will talk about your specific business and what kind of infographics can help you. So we'll brainstorm together. If you sign up today, it's basically a pre-order. So if you pre-order, you get access to things that we're putting out for people who signed up first, and you get some of these previews. Some of them will be private that I will send to you, and you get a one-on-one session. Anyway, so thanks for watching. Leave any questions about this in the comments, and I'll be back here probably next week. But I'll let you know. I'll give you a heads up. I'll post one day before, so it's not a surprise. Anyway, talk to you guys soon. Bye.